welcome back to my channel. And if you haven't been here in a little while, I think you'll notice I changed the name to be spiritual-ish, right? Because a lot of what I talk about has kind of spiritual undertones, right? But it's not exactly at all religious. And I'm like, well, it's spiritual-ish. Because, I look at psychology, I look at uh, anthropology, I look at philosophy, we look at good old neuroscience and metaphysics. And I absolutely love to put energy work into 3D strategies, right? And I call myself lightwalkers because we're the people who are like light workers, but we also, are kind of like a Jedi Knight kicking ass, like is in Skywalker, right? So a light walker is kicking ass and creating an amazing life. And that's what I want to do with this channel is help you do exactly that with what I know and share what I know to help you level up, right? And the way you level up is you lighten up. You lighten up. So today, what I wanted to talk about is basically how to know if you're an overthinker. So forgive me while I really quickly just refer to my notes here because I am going to call this um, video, let's see, I'm going to make up the name here, but like basically, I'm looking at the wrong one. Let us say top 10 problems that overthinking causes. Okay, this way you will know if you're in the right place with me. Okay, and let's just kick it off here. What are the 10 top problems that overthinking causes? So the first thing, people think of overthinking, they may not realize, I call it the spin cycle psyche. Okay, that's my own personal nickname for when you're overthinking and you're just spinning, right? And so you generally feel good about yourself, except the way down deep, you might feel some shame about who you are or who you aren't, right? You may call it imposter syndrome. So you may think like your success in anything might be by accident. And you may be like someone says, oh, you need to work on your worthiness or you need to work on your self-esteem. A lot of that is like you're thinking too much, right? I'm not saying you don't need to work on this thing. I'm just saying that's how you might know if you feel like, oh, I'm imposter syndrome describes me. Well, then I'm telling you that you're in the right place, right? Because that's overthinking. And that's one of the things that absolutely we will working on with spiritual-ish techniques and strategies. Also, if you're inconsistent, right? That's the second way you can know you're overthinking. So this could look like self-sabotage or procrastination, right? And you may feel like it's mostly luck if I get things to work out. The inconsistency, you feel like you're like the switch is on or the switch is off. Your motivation levels are inconsistent. Maybe your feelings are really inconsistent, like you're in a good mood, then you're in a really bad mood, and you may not even identify as that. You might be like, everything was fine until then this person said this, and then I just thought this, and I was feeling this, and you're being very reactive, right? So actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we'll just say inconsistent. Number 3, you stay stuck in certain thought patterns that repeat over and over again, right? So that's what we call rumination, where you're telling yourself a story. And obviously, there's going to be elements of it. You're like, it's not a story, Jennie, it's truth. I understand that, but you're telling yourself as if, as if it were a story. You're telling yourself the drama of it. You're replaying it over and over. And then she said this, and then I said this. Sometimes you may even change it to be like, oh, if I had said this, then she would have thought this. And you're you're kind of living in this hypothetical world where it's thought patterns, right? Nothing's actually happening. You may be sitting in a room by yourself, but all this is going on in your head. That's overthinking, right? Number 4, perfectionism. Perfectionism is actually overthinking. And the way you know this is like you may see something as not good enough, I'm not good enough, or the thing I'm doing isn't good enough, or oh, just give it to me, let me do it, right? Because you're like, it's just quicker if I do it myself instead of letting go and trusting that someone else can do a good enough job, or it's got to be just a certain way. Or maybe you're even kind of picky in particular, because if it isn't a certain way, maybe you have these rules in your head that if it isn't a certain way, then it's going to be bad or it's not going to work or whatever the reason. So these perfectionistic tendencies can also stop you from starting things. For example, if you needed to, let's say, pack for a trip and you were like, well, I can't begin packing until all my laundry is done. I pretty much guarantee you could start packing before all your laundry is done. You could probably pack without your laundry even being done, because that's like a perfectionistic thing saying, well, if all my clothes are clean and I could just go to the closet and look at everything, all my options, and pick out what I need, and then I need to know, but I don't know what mood I'll be in. So I have to pack for all my moods. I have to think about how I'll feel if I wore that. I mean, that's very you're living in the land of overthinking so much that it is prohibiting you from getting started packing. That's just perfectionism. I mean, if I was going to just keep calling it down, it's perfectionism, but it's just overthinking, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5, and this kind of bleeds into perfectionism, but it's black and white thinking, right? So this is black and white thinking is when you're all or nothing. Like I have to have all my clothes washed before I can pick the ones I want to take with me. Or if all my clothes aren't washed, then I can't do any of the packing yet. That's just black and white thinking, which is also the perfectionism in that example. Black and white thinking is also, it's this or it's that. And you're not someone who can easily blend it together and come up with a multifaceted solution to something. So you're thinking, well, I either got to do it this way or that way. You're kind of overthinking it instead of being looser on your ideas. I help people with that, right? Struggling with managing time. If managing time is a struggle, you are overthinking for sure at some point. And probably a lot of that has to do with emotional management. So just saying that that's a key factor. If you're one of those 10-minute late people, right? Then I'm going to tell you, if you can be 10 minutes late, then you can be on time. It's just you're not realizing the thought patterns and your behavioral patterns that are leading you to always be 10 minutes late, right? And I say that with love, because I used to be the 10-minute late person. Trust me, I understand. The struggle is real. Okay, so then there's also being reactive, like I was starting to say before. When something happens that's good, then you feel really good. If something happens that's bad, then you feel really bad. Um, and what's happening outside of you is going to dictate how you feel. That's being reactive, right? And obviously, there's times when things happen, and of course you're going to be reacting to what's happening. But if you have a, let's call it a solid, grounded anchor of who you are and how you want to be, you're less reactive, meaning you're not overthinking so much. I know people will say that when you're highly reactive, you're not thinking. They don't realize this is actually overthinking. But it is overthinking in the sense that your emotional management is out of whack. You're probably telling yourself a bunch of stories. You're thinking this needs that, and then this needs that, and you're getting a little, reactive. So, yeah. Anyway, So that's number 7. Number 8, if you're overly sensitive to rejection, even potentially like perceived rejection, like it may not even actually be that someone has said anything to you to reject you. It's just you could interpret the situation and go, oh, because they didn't do this, now they're disappointed. Or because I didn't say this, or they didn't say this to me, so that means XYZ. And you're making up stories, but you're being overly sensitive to the cues. You see how these all kind of intertwine, like you're being reactive, yeah, but you may not actually do anything. The reaction just may be in your own head. And I mean, this can cause, you hear people say paralysis by analysis. You're just thinking too much, right? So if you're overly sensitive to rejection, you're probably thinking too much because you're perceiving possibly something that someone doesn't even mean. Or if they outright reject you, you're now having to manage all those feelings of rejection, which take up a lot of time, a lot of bandwidth. And you don't just feel it and like feel it with nothing going on in your head. You think about it. You think about this and that and this and that, and you're overthinking. Number 9. So if you believe that outside circumstances determine your success and happiness, you're an overthinker. Instead of living in the moment and showing up as this grounded, centered person who knows themselves, trusts themselves, feels a certain way generally in the world, right? If you believe that this happened and now that determines whether I can do what I need to do, you're an overthinker. Again, with love. Number 10, if you think that habits are too hard to change, you're overthinking. Because there's not really as much thought that goes into changing habits as you would think. No pun intended. But if you think that habits are hard to change, right? We're talking about subconscious processes, right? So it's almost the no thinking. But if you're thinking and thinking and thinking, it's hard to change. And then I do this, and then I do that, and then if I say this, blah, 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 you're overthinking it, right? So those are all problems that you would probably see. You would say, oh yeah, I think change is hard, and or I'm very sensitive. Imposter syndrome hits me all the time. I self-sabotage, right? Those are the problems that come from overthinking. Those are the top 10 problems, I think, that come from overthinking. But I want to tell you a little more here too, right? So there's mistakes that cause this pain. And if you can identify yourself in these mistakes, then you're like 80% there, getting some relief, honestly, because just recognizing there's a problem is huge. So if you endlessly seek outside of yourself for solutions and meaning, right, then you're giving your power away. And that's actually causing you the suffering, the pain. So what I'm going to do is do a little series over the next few days. I say few days. I hope this whole week, right? Let's do a little series on, today I'm talking about the 10 challenges, and we're going to go digging deeper into these things over the next 10 days. So be sure and watch the videos that come up after this. But endlessly seeking outside yourself is definitely a problem. That's actually a mistake you're making, right? Another one is allowing your emotions to dictate your actions. It's a huge mistake. Your actions don't need to be dependent on how you feel, right? Sometimes people pleasing just to keep everyone else happy. Like if you think that's a really good strategy, like that's actually a mistake you're making that is causing you more overthinking and more suffering, right? Focusing on the past or even focusing on the future, like focusing on the past is rumination. Focusing on the future is worry, right? Are you a worry wart? That can be, not putting your focus in the present moment. That's a mistake. Because yes, there's a time for reflection and yes, there's a time for planning, but really everything that you create is in this now moment, right now, right now. All right, moving on. So another mistake that can cause this pain, right, of overthinking is defending your limiting belief, which keeps you from realizing new possibilities. This is huge, and I could go on to this conversation for days, and I will not right here, right now, but I'll talk more about this in another video. If there's something that you get triggered, right? You feel triggered, I'm promising you that is showcasing, highlighting a limiting belief. And you will probably feel like dying on the hill over defending that it's real. I have people tell me, no, Jennie, this is not a belief. This is real. This is reality. And I'm here to tell you, most times it's really just a limiting belief. And that's a mistake. Holding on to a limiting belief prevents you from seeing new solutions, new possibilities. Sounds obvious. It's not obvious when you're living in it. So just, I'll do another video on that later. Speaking in black and white terms, like I said, always. Oh, and then that took forever. Did not take forever, right? It took 10 minutes or it took 2 hours, whatever the time. It's forever is an absolute forever, right? Or all or nothing, right? Or I always do this, or you never do that. Those terms, those are black and white terms, and they limit your perception. They skew your perception. So the way you're actually seeing things may not be exactly aligned to how they are, and they're definitely skew things to like the way you're seeing them is not helpful for you, right? I'm not trying to be like the truth police here. I'm just saying, is that the helpful way to look at it? Or is it more helpful to say, sometimes you do this and sometimes that is this way? Number 10. Oh, that's not number 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is 7. Last one, right? A mistake that causes this pain. Remaining stuck in old habits that don't serve your new goals. I am so guilty of this myself, right? So if you're stuck in an old habit, because habits are just repeated thoughts and behavior patterns over and over and over again, it's not simple to just break them, right? And one of the things I can tell you for myself, smoking, I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to smoke for years and years. And to quit is I could make a whole video on that too, but I won't. It's just, but when you can quit an old habit, right? Like if my new habit was to get into shape, well, there's a real problem I was experiencing because I couldn't do all the exercising because I got winded. I couldn't run up the stairs a million times, up and down, because I couldn't breathe because I was smoking, right? Like, so an old habit can prevent you from a new goal. And it may not be physical like that. Maybe a thought pattern habit, right? If you're someone who swims in negativity, it's hard to want to do new things, right? If you're like, well, my new goal is to go to this gardening class every week, right? But if you're going to be a Debbie Downer about it and be like, oh, and this person is in my way and I couldn't hear the person, I couldn't sit, oh, and I was uncomfortable, the seats, weren't any good. If you're just negative experience like that, it's hard to, now your goal, you're going to be like, I don't want to go back. And you're not going to reach new goals, right? So easily. And then to finish this, I wanted to finish with something that was like common advice that I think you probably hear that's actually not helpful. People will tell you to do this so that to help with your overthinking and to help with the mistakes you're making, right? So experts that have had your problem have your solution. If you think that experts who have had your problem have your solution, I gotta tell you, that is not always true. That's actually common advice. That's just, I mean, I hear that when people are like, oh, so-and-so's had the exact same problem as you, so they can help you. That's not, that may be true. It also may not be true, right? So you might want to, think about listening to someone for advice, but like, people who haven't actually had the same shared lived experience might have had training and know how to help from an educational standpoint or training standpoint. They also may have complementary, like, kind of skill sets, like things that help them do this that's sort of similar to what you're dealing with. They might actually be very helpful to you. So you don't have to, because sometimes you could end up like commiserating with someone who's been in the same problems as you, and they're not actually well equipped to help you. I'm not saying always, I'm just saying sometimes. Another common advice, right? To think that a new system, like let's say if you're bad with time management, oh, I need a new system or a new planner or a new journal or a new app, like this new thing. Like sometimes new is not the solution. Just saying. This goes with perfect, right? The perfect planner, the perfect system, the perfect next thing, right? That's not always the solution. And another advice you might hear is plan out each step for each activity so that each day of the month, each hour of the day, each minute, like you can't micromanage yourself like that. I tell people all the time, no, no, no. Especially if you're an overthinker, no, no, no. And talk therapy to discuss your problems over and over. Oops. Discuss your problems over and over again. That's not always helpful. Is it sometimes helpful? Yes. Is it always helpful? No. So just think about the advice you're getting to handle your overthinking and all the related problems like imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, procrastination. Anyway, so stay tuned. I hope this was helpful just to give you insight if you're in the right place. If you're having these kinds of things, I can geek out so hard on the stuff all day long. So that's what I'm going to do over the next few videos is we're going to talk about all this overthinking and what to actually, how you can think about it in a more helpful way, right? And so that you can be light walking with me, and welcome to being spiritual-ish.